Hi everyone, hope everyone's well, hope everyone's doing all right, haven't gone a little bit crazy. You'll notice today I am wearing another blue shirt. That's because all my shirts happen to be blue, because I'm a little bit strange like that. I think you'll find a lot of authors are a little bit strange, but in a good way, I think. Right, so today I'm going to read to you guys my book, Herman and Rosie, which is possibly, well, actually, I think it is my favourite book that I've written. I'm probably not supposed to have favourites, but I think this is my favourite book because I put so much of my heart and soul into making this book. Okay, let's get straight into it. So, Herman and Rosie by me. Okay. And as we always do, I'm going to start with the end papers. And here are the end papers, and the end papers here are a map, as we can see, because I wanted to show the reader exactly where our characters, Herman and Rosie, live. And so this is a map, a very old map of Manhattan. And I've actually drawn arrows to where they live. I've got Herman lives here and Rosie lives over here, as you can see, which is pretty much next door. And in case they get hungry, great hot dog place here. Right, so let's get into the story. And this is where it begins. Once upon a time in a very busy city, on a very busy street in two very small apartments, lived Herman Schubert here and Rosie Bloom over here. And you can see the arrows pointing down to where their little apartments are in the city. Herman lived on the 7th floor. He liked pot plants, playing the oboe, wild boysenberry yogurt, the smell of hot dogs in the winter, and watching films about the ocean. There he is. Rosie lived on the 5th floor in the building next door. She liked pancakes, listening to old jazz records, the summertime subway breeze, toffees that stuck to her teeth, singing on the fire escape, and watching films about the ocean. So they have a couple of things in common, don't they? Namely music, but also watching films about the ocean. Herman and Rosie liked living in the city. There were days when all the buzzing and honking and humming made them feel like anything was possible. But often, the city was a lonely place. So here on the left, we have the exciting city, the vibrant energy of the city. But as we can see on the right, for poor old Herman and Rosie, they are lonely. They're back to back in the cafe. And everybody's a bit too busy to notice them. Herman worked in a tall building in an office on the 51st floor. He spent all day on the phone selling things. Not everyone wanted to buy a thing, but this didn't matter to Herman. He just loved having someone to talk to. And there he is, happily chatting to someone on the phone. He's probably not doing his job. As we can see over here, he's in the middle of this office and there are so many animals. Look at all the animals on the phone selling things. Except Herman, well, I think he's not doing his job properly. Rosie worked uptown in a fine restaurant. In the afternoon, she rode to singing lessons. There she is, working in the fine restaurant, although it's not that fine, is it? She enjoys going to singing lessons. On Thursday night, she sang for 2 hours at a small downtown jazz club. It was the highlight of her week. Here she is, and she loves to sing at the jazz club. Unfortunately, there's not many people, not many in the audience except a duck, and he's not really paying attention, is he? The Mangy Hound Jazz Club. That sounds like a fun club, doesn't it? One day on his way home from work, Herman heard a noise. It wasn't a normal city noise. It was a different kind of noise. Someone was singing. And it was wonderful. It made him feel like he'd eaten honey straight from the jar. Look at that. He's listening to all the wonderful music as it floats along on the breeze. That night, with the singing in his head, Herman took his oboe to the roof and played a groovy little jazz number. So here he is, inspired. He takes to the rooftop to play his oboe. In the building next door, Rosie began to hum and her toes began to tingle. Oboe music filled the room. It was the most splendid sound she had ever heard. See, she's in the bath, listening to the music. And it stayed in her head, like good tunes do. She hummed it as often as she could so it didn't fade away. There she is, she's cycling across the Brooklyn Bridge. She has a song in her head. For days it seemed that the music was following them. Herman kept hearing that beautiful voice and Rosie kept hearing that groovy tune everywhere. So I've drawn these pictures of the two of them on old postcards, old New York postcards, as they wander around the city. And they hear each other, but they don't see each other. Then one morning, Herman arrived at work to find that he had lost his job. He just wasn't selling enough things. Herman thought that he'd sold lots of things, but in truth, he was so happy to be talking to someone he often forgot about the selling part. And this is a bit of a sad picture. We have a koala, and he's telling poor old Herman that he's lost his job. That evening at the Mangy Hound Jazz Club, Rosie sang up a storm. But there was no one there to hear it. After her set, Rosie was given some bad news. The club was closing down. So they've both had a bad day. Poor Rosie. She loves to sing, but unfortunately her club is closing down. Herman left his office for the last time. He didn't feel like playing his oboe that night. And Rosie didn't feel like singing. The city felt busier and louder and darker than usual. So now, for Herman, the city feels different. It feels much noisier. It feels very angry and loud. And for Rosie, it feels very dark. Herman Schubert sat in his small apartment eating pretzels. To cheer himself up, he decided to watch his entire Jacques Cousteau underwater film collection. Packed away neatly under the bed sat Herman's oboe. Rosie Bloom stood in the kitchen of her small apartment making pancakes. Lots of pancakes, way more than she could ever possibly eat. This didn't make her feel any better, so she sat down and watched her entire Jacques Cousteau underwater film collection. And there we see Herman locked away in his little apartment, watching his Jacques Cousteau underwater film collection. And there is Rosie doing the same. In fact, it's the same thing they're watching on the television. Rather sadly, it says, "The dolphin cries out for its mother." It's very sad, isn't it? Oh dear, hopefully this gets a little bit happier. Days and nights and weeks inched by. Rosie lost her voice to the sounds of the city, and Herman lost the urge to play his oboe. The city kept on moving, but everything had fallen out of tune. So everything is a little bit chaotic and out of routine for them now. Then one morning, something was different. Rosie woke suddenly. She needed toffee that stuck to her teeth. Herman woke suddenly. He had a craving for wild boysenberry yogurt. It was such a beautiful day outside that Herman soon forgot his yogurt and Rosie forgot her toffee. Instead, they walked and walked and walked and walked. So around the city, we can see just over here, their little apartments side by side, and They leave at the same time and they walk in similar directions, but not together, around the city on this beautiful day. Until they both ended up at the same place, where they had a hot dog. Then they both walked home. This is the first time they've actually seen each other. They even order the same hot dog. And if we look carefully, we can see they look a little bit happier. It's hard not to be happy on a beautiful day, isn't it? That night, Herman got out his oboe from under his bed and headed to the roof. The city seemed pleased to see him. Even its rattles and honks sounded musical. Rosie was cooking and feeling strangely happy when she heard the familiar sounds of a groovy little jazz number. She just dropped the fry pan. She just had to follow that tune. Out, up and over until... So now she really needs to know, where is that music coming from? So she's willing to take a bit of a risk down here as she jumps from building to building. And of course, they finally meet. I think this is my favourite picture in the whole book. And as you can see, there are no words on this page, because hopefully it's powerful enough to say everything I needed to say without any words. I think it is. What do you think? And the last page. Once upon a time, in a very busy city, on a very busy street, on top of a very tall building, Rosie found Herman, and Herman found Rosie. The city was never quite the same. So there they are, playing together in a band called the Cousteaus. And so they're finally not lonely, and they're finally together doing the same thing that they both love to do. So that is my story of Herman and Rosie. I hope you enjoyed it. I enjoyed reading it. I always enjoy reading this book. It still is a book that moves me. So, okay, fantastic. Well, I hope you really enjoyed that, and I will see you guys soon. Take care. Bye.